I still can't hold hand publicly here, yeah? I'm always, always on high alert the minute I walk out of my house. I have to be. When I'm driving, my car doors are locked. I have a CCTV camera inside and out. I have CCTV cameras around my house. I am constantly aware of my surroundings. I'm looking around. I'm wondering who is, sussing me out. I'm wondering who is behind me. I'm wondering who is in front of me. I've gotten so used to it that anxiety doesn't play a role in it anymore. I don't recognize it as anxiety anymore. I just recognize it as being part and parcel of the work that I'm doing.
From Equal Measures 2030, I am Saren Coley, and this is Do Girls and Women Count? At Equal Measures 2030, we connect data and evidence with advocacy and action on gender equality to smash the patriarchy and transform the lives of girls and women. In each episode in this series, we'll be talking to some of the world's most impressive women's rights activists on their personal journeys through inequality and their life's mission to rebalance a very unbalanced world. This episode's guest is LGBTIQ rights activist Rosanna Flamer-Caldera.
There's a mosquito buzzing in front of my face, so you know you're in the tropics, and there'll be birds screaming from outside, and there's rain.
Rosanna was born in 1956 and grew up in Colombo in a very unusual family from 1960s Sri Lanka.
Well, I don't think anybody that I know of has ever grown up like I did, yeah. I think my parents were extremely special. They were extremely open-minded. I learned everything from them. They were very much into wildlife and nature protection, human rights, and everything like that long before their time, We didn't come from a family that had these roles, sort of like preconceived roles for this person or that person or the other. My father was like, he wasn't at all interested in all of that stuff. Yeah, he treated my mother the same way he would, treat anybody else. So, or even better, because of course that's his wife. But yeah, there was never an issue about, don't say this because it's not up to you to say something. Decisions were always made together.
Despite a very liberal family, Rosanna struggled with her sexuality, remaining closeted until her late teens.
Well, living in Sri Lanka and growing up different, so to speak, it was a bit of a nightmare, I guess it was a very internalized struggle. From a very young age, I always was very sort of attracted to all of the female leads in movies and stuff like that, not the male leads, yeah? In the Bond movies, I was always looking at the girls and going, wow, yeah. When I was like 14 or something like that, I fell in love with this woman. I was still trying to deny it, but the feeling was so amazing and wonderful that, it seemed right. But at the same time, I was trying to deny it, yeah, because you're not supposed to feel like that about somebody of your own sex. Keeping in mind, my parents were the most liberal parents anyone could ask for. It was not their fault that I was like hiding this. It was because I couldn't actually come to terms with it for myself. I had this whole internalized homophobia.
At the age of 18, Rosanna left Sri Lanka and moved to San Francisco, America's gay capital.
I had a cousin who was a lesbian. And one day she just asked me, "Are you gay?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." She said, "Okay, fine, come with me." Jumped into her truck, and she took me to this lesbian bar, the neighborhood lesbian bar. I was nervous, yeah, and I was thinking, like, what is this? What am I going to find in there, you know? I had just come from Sri Lanka like a year before that or something. But when I walked in there, you know, there was a very good-looking lesbian with short hair and a suit sitting on one of the bar stools. So I crept up and sat next to her, and I thought to myself, yeah, it feels like home. It felt comfortable. I went for my first Pride parade. There I went, you know, standing 2-3 deep in the crowd on Market Street. Harvey Milk was the Grand Marshal of that particular parade. Our lives kind of revolved around Harvey for a few more years after that, because he was killed later on that year.
Both Mayor Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk have been shot and killed.
It was a case of being exposed to how things were done in San Francisco, where, you know, protests and, you know, vigils and various things. And then when I heard that in Sri Lanka it was still a criminal offense to have, you know, adult same-sex sexual relationship, consenting sexual relationship, that I realized, wow, you know, things need to be done here. It's that's kind of crazy, yeah. I decided, along with a few friends of mine, that we would open up a mixed organization, an LGBTIQ mixed organization, because there wasn't anything for everybody. And so since 2004, when we did that, I've been working with Equal Ground on advocating for the rights of the LGBTIQ community here in Sri Lanka.
As Equal Ground attempted to establish itself in the conservative setting of Sri Lanka, the country was also experiencing great turmoil.
Waves up to 10 meters high engulf the coasts of many countries. In Sri Lanka, officials say more than 3,000 people have been killed and more than 1 million affected.
6 months after we started the organization, the tsunami hit Sri Lanka. So our first our first year and a half of operation was, you know, doing tsunami relief. And by doing tsunami relief, we actually made friends with various people who, you know, trusted us that we were, you know, a bona fide organization. We were looking at their well-being rather than trying to do something untoward. We also had a dictatorial kind of government. At the time, we were in a war, we were in a civil war till 2009. In the middle of it, 2008, we were suddenly attacked by a Muslim extremist group that basically said that we were spreading homosexuality, that we were agents of the Jews trying to convert the Muslims into homosexuals. And then they had all these fatwas and various things on our heads. And further on down the line, we were under surveillance by the Criminal Investigation Department. I and my staff members were followed. So that was another obstacle. However, I think the most hurtful of all of the issues that I have faced is the type of attacks by members of our own LGBTIQ community, mostly gay men, who have, you know, said everything from I'm robbing money to I am molesting women to, you know, this and that and the other thing. It's quite disconcerting that members of your own community, the community that you are giving your life to, you know, make changes for, attack you in this way. And I want this to come out, because I know I'm not the only woman who runs an organization, that, has to go through this. If we fight amongst each other, how on earth are we going to be united in one voice to tell people who are opposed to us that we want our rights, that we want equality?
In Sri Lanka, conducting research on LGBTIQ issues has been limited by social and cultural restrictions. And when there is no data, people are made invisible.
We've been the only organization to do research on LGBTIQ lives and how all of this is affecting them. And we've just completed, for example, a mapping study on how many people in Sri Lanka actually identify as LGBTIQ. And it basically came up that 12% of those who were interviewed identify as LGBTIQ. Yeah. Keep in mind, of course, that a majority of LGBTIQ persons will never ever say, yes, tick that box. They won't, they're too scared. So if you say 12%, then in my mind is way over 20%. Yeah. So when you take that stat into account, you're looking at, say, 2.5 million people who can't be employed or who are not allowed to be employed, who can't finish their higher studies or who are not allowed to finish their higher studies, cannot find employment, cannot access social services, and so on and so on and so on. Yeah. So yeah, we felt from a very early, from earlier times when we first started the organization, that research was key to our success in convincing people that there is a great harm that is being done to our country, and a great harm that is being done to our citizens, especially the citizens who are LGBTIQ persons. So data plays a huge role in what we do.
Rosanna says that when Equal Ground started, they had several very definite strategies, and they still employ those strategies today.
First and foremost, we realized that our own LGBTIQ community members didn't know what they were, who they were. They didn't realize it's just as normal as being heterosexual. They thought that they were deviants and perverts and this and that. So there was a lot of internalized homophobia. So we needed to educate and sensitize our own community to accept themselves. We have run the only counseling service for LGBTIQ since 2005. So without that, we would not be able to come to where we are now, which is a far more vibrant LGBTIQ community, a far more vocal LGBTIQ community. The second was the same issue, sensitizing and educating the public, because even if the laws changed today, perceptions and mindsets are not going to change tomorrow. We did this series of sensitizing programs on the northwestern side of Sri Lanka, and it's predominantly Tamil and Muslim. We had the workshop. The next day we got a call from the field officer and said something remarkable happened. So we said, what is it? And she said, there was an older lady seated in on the workshop. She called me last night at 11 o'clock and she said that this workshop actually saved her life, and it saved her son's life as well. Because her son is gay, she was so ashamed and so not knowing how to, handle all of this. She was going to feed poison to her son and then take poison herself and kill herself. But after coming to the workshop, she said, my whole mind has changed. I know that now I can, support my son, and there's nothing wrong with him, that he is who he is. So thank you so much for inviting me to come to this workshop, because if not, I don't think that, I think I would have carried out what I was planning for me and my son, yeah? that's one of the stories that will stick with me for the rest of my life, I think. We have sensitized, police force, healthcare workers, local government workers, just society at large. We have been, sensitizing corporates. We have been telling them, this affects your business as well on so many different levels. Yeah. And particularly since Sri Lanka is also a big tourist destination, you are basically cutting off your nose to spite your face if you are going to be homophobic because, the pink dollar and pound. So since COVID, several companies have actually approached us. Companies that run, have hotels, have destination tours and so on and so forth, because they want to open their market now to the LGBT community because, hey, they need all the help they can get. One of the other real success stories is the media. I mean, we've had sensitizing programs with the media, and they have basically changed so much because before that, they wouldn't say, man commits murder, man kills a woman or whatever, or another man. It's homosexual kills somebody. So all at once there is this, and, they would write such derogatory stuff about, homosexuality or being transgender or whatever. And it was really fueling the flames, so to speak, yeah? So, but since we sensitize media, I mean, there's so much positive media coming out in support of LGBTIQ that, really makes me proud.
Sri Lanka's legal framework around same-sex relations remains in place from the colonial era, and acts of homosexuality still carry a penalty of up to 10 years imprisonment.
Somebody the other day asked me this question, so what have you achieved really? So I say to them, what do you mean by that? Do you mean achieved legally, or do you mean achieved as far as social space? Obviously, legally, it's difficult. Otherwise, we would have done it a long time ago. Yeah, we have what is called a savings law clause in our Constitution, Article 16, which basically says that any law that was enacted before the amendments in 1978 cannot be challenged in a court of law. It has to be an act of legislature. 230 members of parliament saying, yeah, give them their rights, no worries, strike the laws out, fine, yeah, sure. Let me tell you that the governments, successive governments for the last, 17 years since we've been advocating have been not idyllic, yeah? So the other way around is that we are more vocal, we are more out, there's more people talking about the LGBT issue, and that is the momentum that we want to push this over the top, yeah?
Equal Ground is now in its 17th year, and Rosanna still finds herself regularly taken aback by the range of people they are able to reach through their work.
We've seen a huge shift in the way people have reacted to our posts from, really bad, horrible stuff to most people saying good things. And when somebody does say something bad, there's a whole bunch of people that pounce on that person and, tell that person, hey, you know what you're talking about. We just ran a campaign called Ally for Equality, and part of that campaign was to ask allies to post a video of themselves. It's just a half a second video saying, I'm a proud ally. And I thought, okay, fine, I can, basically twist the arm of 10 of my friends and get them to say that. And then, we would have at least a few, right? Are you kidding? We got over 100 videos.
I'm a proud ally.
I am a proud ally.
I'm a සාඩම්බර මිතුරෙක්. I'm a සාඩම්බර මිතුරෙක්.
நான் ஒரு பெருமை மிக்க உறவினர்.
நான் பெருமை கொடிய அப்பா.
And it was in 3 languages. It wasn't just English. So, there was a dad from Jaffna, for example, which is up in the north, and predominantly a Tamil-speaking community that said, I'm proud of my son who is gay. You know, that brought tears to my eyes because the Tamil community in particular are ultra conservative in that sense, yeah. So for him to say that was amazing. I think at least we have other people who are looking out for us, yeah. Even though maybe our families still hate us or, you know, our workplace hates us, but these people love us. So, you know, there is beauty in that.
In the next episode, we hear from French Afro-feminist filmmaker Amandine Gay.
La conception de l'adoption, du point de vue occidental, c'est que c'est un acte. Il y a un mineur isolé, il y a une famille sans enfants, on les met ensemble, c'est l'adoption, c'est fini. Mais pour la personne adoptée, en fait, ça dure toute la vie. Je suis adoptée, quand à 18 ans, je vais voir mon dossier et qu'il n'y a pas toutes les informations que je veux et que, en fait, mon statut d'adoptée fait que j'ai un certain rapport à l'État français. Je suis une adoptée quand je me rends compte que j'ai des fibromes utérins et que je voudrais qu'on m'enlève l'utérus, mais qu'on me dit non parce qu'on ne connaît pas mes antécédents médicaux et que j'ai pas moyen de les trouver, sauf si le CNOP retrouve ma mère de naissance, mais ça fait 3 ans que j'ai demandé l'ouverture de mon dossier et il s'est toujours rien passé. Et puis, je suis une adoptée parce que quand j'ai des enfants, ils vont me dire mais pourquoi ta mère elle est blanche, etc. Ça ne s'arrête jamais en fait.
Thank you for listening to Do Girls and Women Count from Equal Measures 2030. You can listen and subscribe to this series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. You can also listen online at equalmeasures2030.org/podcast, where you can find more about Equal Measures 2030's work and Rosanna's work. This series is hosted by me, Saren Coley, and produced by Fat Rat Films, with directions and editing from Jodie Taylor, additional editing from Olivia Humphreys, sound design from Jamie Pereira, production assistance and French translation from Ella Godfrey, and Spanish translation from Julia Rosen.